Found footage films are exactly what the name implies. They're movies where all of the scenes have been stitched together from recovered clips to tell one cohesive story. I think found footage films can be really fun. I wanted to share my favorites with you, so here's my top 5 found footage films. This is not technically a found footage film. It's more of an interview-style type recording of Mark Duplass telling his story. The premise is that Mark Duplass hires Patrick Brice to come for the day to film. We find out that Duplass is dying, his wife is pregnant, and so what he wants to do is record this day in the life of to leave for his unborn child. We don't know if Duplass is just lonely, looking for a friend, because he's really kind of awkward. I mean, socially, he just doesn't really get how to talk to people or how to behave in front of them. And maybe, though, he's a little off. Not just awkward, but kind of not right in the head. There's a certain unease that goes throughout the entire film, and you begin to inch forward on the edge of your seat because you're not exactly sure what's going to happen, and you're pretty sure that if something does happen, I'm not quite sure I'm going to enjoy it. He tells stories of his childhood, and he has this big old wolf mask that is really unsettling. And he talks about how his dad made up this song and he wore it, and so then Duplass begins to sing it for you, and it's just bizarre. It's really weird, and I can't imagine ever singing it to my own child because I think, well, first off, just having the mask, because it would terrify any little kid, let alone probably some adults. Even though it's not technically a found footage film, I still really enjoyed Creep. There's no sex and there's no nudity. There is some violence and there is a lot of language. This is such a well done movie because there's only 2 actors in it. It's Mark Duplass and Patrick Brice. That's it. Brice steps in front of the camera sometimes, and it's great because it confirms the nervousness and the unease that we as an audience are feeling because you see it in his face, in his mannerisms, in his behavior. And you can tell that as the story progresses, he just kind of wants to go home. There are a few funny moments in there, but I think it's more of the cringy funny or the nervous laughter that comes versus ha ha ha, this is just a comedy, because it's not a comedy at all. It's more of a thriller and possibly a horror. I wouldn't really classify it as that though. It's more definitely just the thriller or even something to mess with your mind. Ah! Number 4 on my list is 2008's Cloverfield. This is produced by J.J. Abrams, and it is just insane. It's being told through the perspective of a handheld video camera. And really what's happening is an alien has landed, but we don't know that at the beginning. The people are just tearing through the streets, the military is there, they're shooting at things, everything is blowing up. I mean, it's just insane at what all the carnage that's going on. I'd heard a report that some of the theater goers were actually physically getting sick because of the motion that was going on. It was so jarring and it was so jittery. And that's just insane to think about, right? If you're sitting there in the theater and you start to get motion sickness and then you're like, oh, there goes all my popcorn and soda and everything else that I just paid good money for. If you watch it at home, I don't think you're gonna have that problem there because, you know, while it's crazy and it's hard on the eyes a little bit to watch all of the movement, it's definitely not fully immersive like it would be watching it in the theater. I think the reason that I like Cloverfield so much is how raw it actually feels, how just jittery it is. It's this level of realism. Now, it's not something that I totally will watch all the time because I think I'd get sick, like physically, of just watching it, you know, jerking all over the place. But the concept is great. Here's one thing I would suggest if you're watching it for the first time, make sure you're paying attention through all of the credits because they're showing some more just footage that was on the videotape, and you see little hints here and there, and especially one that just gives you oh, maybe that's how. There's no nudity, there's a little implied sex and sexual behavior. There's a lot of violence and a lot of language, and so if you're sensitive to that, just beware. Coming in at number 3 is 2012's The Bay. Now this is totally found footage, and it is told from all kinds of news reports. There's an ecological disaster in Chesapeake Bay, and these parasitic organisms are beginning to just take over. It sounds like it's some huge science fiction film, right? But the actual execution of the movie doesn't make it seem that way at all. It seems very true, very believable. You hear all of these scientific facts and the way that the story is presented from news reports and police footage. A lot of the shots are just static shots with nothing going on other than some garbled audio. And most of the time the audio is pretty clear that you can hear. In one instance, police officers arrive at a house and you see from the dash cam just the static image of the house. Now it's just recording and it's at night, so it's kind of night vision greenish, and you just hear the talking back and forth over the walkie-talkies. Oh, it's creepy at what goes on in there. And most of it's left up to our imagination because we can't see it. We're only hearing this. There's no sex and no nudity, but there is plenty of profanity and violence. If you're looking for something creepy that borders on realism, you need to check out The Bay. Coming in at number 2 is probably the most iconic found footage film. It's 1999's Blair Witch Project, the original one starring Heather Donahue and Joshua Leonard. Now Joshua Leonard you could have seen most recently in Unsane, and that was kind of unsettling of a movie, but it's not found footage, and so we're not going to talk about that right now. Blair Witch Project isn't the first found footage type of movie, but it is certainly the one that broke the mold and it became mainstream. I remember when the marketing for this came out and you could not tell that this was going to be a fake story. Everything purported it to be real found footage that they were stitching together to tell the story, that these hikers had gone missing in the forest. Oh, it was creepy. And then when you watched it, the movie itself was really creepy too. But a lot of people, I don't think, paid so much attention to the dialogue. They became passive viewers and listeners. And that was the problem. You missed it if you didn't hear all of the dialogue. That's what really made the last scene so creepy and eerie. Sure, was the whole thing creepy as it goes along? Absolutely. You have all of these close-up shots of Heather Donahue in the night vision and the snot's dribbling from her nose. It adds to the creep factor, definitely. Now there have been a lot of horror films since Blair Witch Project that have taken their cue from them, doing the whole found footage thing. We have the Paranormal Activities, the VHS, all of these different things. And some of them are good and some of them aren't, and some of them are just plain out copycats. Now, as far as Blair Witch is concerned, I would stay away from at least the first sequel. I haven't seen the second one, but I'm sure that it's probably just as trashy. The original is definitely where it's at. There's no sex and there's no nudity. There's a little to no violence, really. I mean, it's implied and stuff like that, but there is a lot of profanity. And this is definitely something that is jittery and makes you just on edge throughout the entire thing. So if you're sensitive to these types of movies, probably skip it. Otherwise, definitely check out number 2 on the list, Blair Witch Project. Coming in for honorable mention is 2010's Norwegian classic. I can't call it a classic. As honorable mention for my top 5 found footage films, it's 2010's Troll Hunter. Now this is a Norwegian film, and it's certainly not for everybody. My family basically hates it, and I love it. It's crazy. The story revolves around a group of people who go out to find this killer bear, and they enlist the help of a bear hunter. Well, it turns out that he's not really a bear hunter, he's a troll hunter. It's creepy, there's a lot of night footage that happens, and it's a lot of running through the forest and you're not really seeing anything. But when you do, it is crazy. A lot of it takes place in the mountains and in the snow, and there's this crazy scene that takes place on a snowcat. The special effects are surprisingly pretty good. I really enjoyed the story. I think it's a lot of fun to watch. Now, it doesn't totally make my top 5, but that's why it's an honorable mention, right? There's no sex and there's no nudity. There's a lot of profanity and a lot of violence. If you're up for a found footage film that you have to read subtitles and it's just a little weird, I suggest you give 2010's Troll Hunter a try. Number 1 on my list of the top 5 found footage films is 2012's Chronicle. It stars Dane DeHaan and Michael B. Jordan. And the whole premise is these friends stumble upon this cave and it has just this weird buzzing noise in it. And what happens is they begin to develop different powers. Every aspect of the movie is seen through footage that is captured, whether it's by phone or by the characters themselves on video cameras or through security footage or news footage even for that matter. All of it throughout the entire thing is stitched together to tell this one story. It's phenomenal because they use special effects to make the characters do different things, and it's really hard to tell that they're special effects. They look that good, and I think some of it is because of the found footage aspect, that some of the film is grainier. It's not high def even though the presentation is in high def. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? The movie is a lot of fun, and it does pose some questions along the way as well, about responsibility, and not the whole Spider-Man thing with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, I guess that's in there, but it's not as cheesy as that. It just talks about if you had powers, what would you do? How would you behave? Would you be good? Would you be bad? A little bit of both? All right, a little bit of both it is. If you're looking for a superhero movie, then you should check out Chronicle. There's no nudity, there's some implied sex, and then there's a lot of violence and there's a lot of profanity. So you do need to be aware of that going in. It's not for little kids by any means. It's definitely a fun watch and something that you can watch repeatedly. If you haven't seen Chronicle, I'd recommend you give it a shot. If you have seen it, maybe it's time to pull it out again and give it another watch. So those are my top 5 found footage films. Oh, that's a mouthful. Say that a bunch of times really fast. I guarantee you, you'll have to wait till the end for the bloopers because it's great. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave them below in the comments. Let me know what your favorites are. If you enjoyed this, give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me. Those are my top 5 found footage films. Say that fast, really fast. So those are my top 5 found footage films. Yeah, say that quick, really fast. So those are my top 5 found footage films. Yeah, say that quick a bunch of times, right? I can't even say it.